eyes are over those who are people of faith. Through their faith, they've come into right relationship with Him, and they're living in a right relationship with Him. Praise the Lord.
Amen.
Mark 15. Heavenly Father, we ask you to bless your word to our hearts. We thank you for your word. We thank you for your presence. We thank you for your people. We thank you for all the blessings that you give to us and that you impart through us, even into the lives of other people, using us for your glory. We thank you so much. And we give you all the praise and all the glory for every wonderful, wonderful thing. In Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Mark chapter 15. Chapter begins with Jesus and his first illegal trial, which is in the palace of the high priest, which we read about in chapter 14. It's a night trial, and it's illegal to have a night trial of the Sanhedrin, the ruling body over the Jewish people, which is basically 70 of the elders of Israel presided over by the high priest. That is that which rules. Well, he's having an illegal trial. He's been arrested in the garden, taken to the palace of the high priest. Peter followed him afar off, set in the garden, set by the fire, set by the servants, 3 times denied Jesus, as Jesus said, before the cock crows twice, thou shalt deny me thrice. And then Peter went out, and as we said from Matthew and from Mark, he wept bitterly. And also, if you look in the 4 Gospels, I don't remember if it's Matthew or not, but it says the Lord turned and looked at Peter. And that would really break your heart, I'll tell you, to be in that situation. So verse 1, and straightway in the morning, it's now daybreak, the chief priest held a consultation with the elders and scribes and the whole council, and bound Jesus. This is the second trial, in the morning, legal, by the Sanhedrin. Bound Jesus and carried him away and delivered him unto Pilate. Pontius Pilate, the governor. And here goes the third trial. Now actually, Mark doesn't give us but about 3 trials, but there's actually about 5 or 6. Verse 2, and Pilate asked him, art thou the king of the Jews? And he answering said unto them, thou sayest it. Jesus basically said, you said it, I am. And the chief priest accused him of many things, but he answered nothing. Now remember, he just answered Pilate, just making a statement, yes, I am. I'm the king of the Jews. He wasn't defending himself, he's stating who he was.
Amen.
Now the chief priests and those religious leaders are asking questions, accusing him of things, and he answered nothing. Verse 4, and Pilate asked him again, saying, answerest thou nothing? Behold, how many things they witness against thee. But Jesus yet answered nothing, so that Pilate marveled. He was amazed. Well, Jesus is fulfilling Isaiah chapter 53, verse 7, which says this, he was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. In his own defense is what it's talking about. He didn't say, well, now I'm not guilty, I didn't do this, here's why. He didn't defend himself. He opened not his mouth. He was brought as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before her shears is dumb, so he opened not his mouth. Now back to verse 6. Now at that feast, which is the Jewish Passover, Pilate released, he released unto them one prisoner whom they desired. Any prisoner you want, you got it. One at the Passover. And there was one named Barabbas, which lay bound with them that had made insurrection with him, who had committed murder in the insurrection. He committed some kind of a violent uprising against the Roman government, the Roman rule. He led it, it sounds like, and people with him. And in this insurrection, he killed somebody, murdered somebody. So now they have him for insurrection against Rome, the rule of Rome, and also for murder. He's not in a very good spot, I'll tell you. That would be undoubtedly 2 death sentences. Because anytime you go against Caesar or you go against Rome, they get rid of you. Verse 8. Oh, by the way, Barabbas means son of the Father. Keep in mind that they said, he said, who shall I release unto you? And they're going to, demand Barabbas. They're going to demand the Son of the Father to be released unto them. Verse 8. And the multitude cried and began to desire him to do as he had ever done unto them, which is to release the prisoner. But Pilate answered them, saying, will ye that I release unto you the King of the Jews? Verse 10. For he knew that the chief priest had delivered him for envy. He knew Jesus didn't do anything wrong. Can you imagine 3 years went by of all the people who had been healed and blessed and loved and delivered and all the things that had been done, and Jesus never spoke against Rome. He never spoke against Pilate. Well, shall we give tribute to Caesar, taxes? Sure. Give to Caesar what belongs to him. He never spoke against Rome. And Pilate had heard all of these things about what Jesus is doing all this time. Amazing, raising the dead. But the chief priest moved the people that he would rather release Barabbas unto them. Now again, we want you to release the Son of the Father and keep in prison and put to death the real, true Son of the Father. Jesus, who's the Son of the Heavenly Father. So they're saying, release Barabbas unto them. And Pilate answered and said again unto them, what will ye then that I shall do unto him whom ye call the King of the Jews? What do you want me to do with him? And they cried out again, crucify him. Then Pilate said unto them, why? What evil hath he done? What evil? What crime has he committed? Pilate knew he hadn't committed no crimes. Hadn't done anything evil. And they cried out the more exceedingly, crucify him, put him to death. And so Pilate, willing to content the people, released Barabbas unto them, and delivered Jesus, when he had scourged him, to be crucified. When he had him whipped or flogged at Pilate's whipping post. And every time I read this, I think they're saying, give us the Son of the Father in the natural, a murderer, a criminal, one who brought insurrection against Rome, and the one who's pure and holy and loves everybody and helps everybody and blesses everybody and delivers everybody. Kill him! The real, true Son of the Father. And the soldiers led him away unto the hall, called Praetorium. And they called together the whole band, and they clothed him with purple, and purple represents royalty, and plaited a crown of thorns and put it about his head. Now this represents like, what do you call it, laurel leaves in a vine wrapped up, and you'll see an emperor or somebody with laurel leaves wrapped around their head. So what they did was they put a purple robe on him, and when it says they plaited the crown of thorns and put it upon his head, if you really stop and think about it, they didn't just take these thorns, big old thorns like this are poisonous. You get stuck with one and you'll swell up from the poison. They didn't just take that and just daily set it upon his head like a king. They were angry at him. They were belittling him. They crammed it on his head. And when they crammed it on his head, those thorns pierced his head. And if you go to Isaiah, somewhere around 47 to 53, and I can't remember exactly where it's at, it will tell you that his vestige was scarred and changed more than any man. In other words, he was distorted and his face all puffed up from the thorns and stuff. So they put on a purple robe. Now they got him looking like a king, royalty. They put a crown of thorns on his head, making him look more like a king. or emperor, or whatever, and began to salute him, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they smote him on the head with a reed, and did spit upon him. And when they smote him on the head with a reed, they're not just touching him. Bless you, bless you, bless you. They're banging him on the head with a reed and spitting on it. They're mad at him. So you know they didn't set the crown of thorns on, they crammed it on his head. And did spit upon him, and bowed their knees, worshiping him. They're mocking him, making fun of him. The one you love so much. The one that we're reading about. And he's here right now in this position, according to Isaiah 53, for you and me. All of this abuse, all this rejection is for us, because of us. Verse 20, and when they had mocked him, they took off the purple from him, and put his own clothes on him, and led him out to crucify him. And they compelled one Simon, a Cyrenian, who lived in Cyrene, which is, they say, a city in Libya, who passed by, coming out of the country, the father of Alexander and Rufus. And some people believe that Mark knew these two, and they were Christians. That's why it's put in the book, Alexander and Rufus. He didn't say to Simon, "Oh, Simon, who are these people?" He knew. So Mark had knowledge of them. Okay, so he compelled this fellow to bear his cross. Verse 22. And they bring him into the place Golgotha, which is being interpreted as the place of a skull. And they gave him to drink wine mingled with myrrh, but he received it not. It's a stupefier. It's a painkiller. It's something that will help ease the suffering of somebody who is dying on the cross or nailed to the cross. Now, in Psalms 69:21 it says this, they gave me also gall for my meat, and in my thirst they gave me vinegar to drink. Talking about Jesus. Now back to Mark 15:24. And when they had crucified him, they parted his garments, casting lots upon them, what every man should take. And again, I was trying to think how many scriptures is fulfilled. I can't remember what it was. It's something like maybe 40 scriptures fulfilled just on the day of his crucifixion. Something like that. Don't quote me on that, but it's an awful lot. And here, when they're casting lot for his garments, Psalms 22:18 says, they parted my garments among them and cast lots for my vesture. In other words, they're gambling for his clothing. And it was the third hour, 9 o'clock in the morning, and they crucified him. And the superscription of his accusation was written over, the King of the Jews. This is declaring him both to be the Messiah, and it's also declaring him to be the Son of God. When he's the promised from God, promised King of the Jews, the King of the Jews is going to be the Messiah, and he's also going to be the Son of God. In Isaiah 7:14, it calls him God with us. In Isaiah 9:6, it talks about a son is given. It's talking about God's Son, Jesus. Verse 27, and with him they crucified two thieves, the one on his right hand and the other on his left. And the scripture was fulfilled which saith, and he was numbered with the transgressors. Now turn to Isaiah 53. He was numbered with the transgressors. All of Isaiah 53 is a messianic chapter. And all of Isaiah 53 relates to Jesus and his suffering and his death, paying the price for us. Isaiah 53, verse 12. Therefore will I divide him a portion with the great. He shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he hath poured out his soul unto death. And he was numbered with the transgressors. And he bare the sin of many. My sin. Your sin. Amen. The sin of the whole world. He bore the sin of many and made intercession for the transgressors. That's for us.
Amen.
Now, back to Mark 15, verse 29. And they passed by, and they that passed by railed on him. Now picture them going by, wagging their heads and saying, Ha, thou that destroyeth the temple and buildest it in 3 days. Where did they hear this from? All of these people that's going by the cross. Ah, you're going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days? Ah, you're a phony, you're this, you're that. Well, who told you he was going to do that? Religious leaders. Because he was accused of it in the night by accusers, talking about John chapter 2, where he was in the temple and he cast those out and said, I'll destroy this temple in 3 days, I'll build it, talking about the temple of his body. So what you have here is you have all these people railing on him, all these people wagging their head, all these people being smart aleck and abusive towards him, and accusing him of going to destroy the temple. They got this from the priests. Yeah, because that's what they're trying to accuse him of, this and blasphemy and so on and so forth. So verse 30. And build it in 3 days, verse 30, save thyself and come down from the cross. He could have. On the cross, he said he could have called 12 legions of angels. 11 for the 12 disciples minus Judas, and 1 for him. 72,000 angels. It only took one angel in the Old Testament to take out 285,000 people. In one swish. 12 legions is a lot of angels. He said he could have called them. So he's saying, save yourself and come down from the cross. He could have just said, okay, step right off the cross if he wanted to. But if he would have, we would have went to hell.
Amen.
Everybody from Adam forward would have went to hell. Because there's salvation in none other, there's none other name given under heaven among men whereby we must be saved. Acts chapter 4, talking about Jesus. Likewise also the chief priests, mocking, said among themselves with the scribes, he saved others, himself he cannot save. Why can't he save himself? Because he's our substitute. If he saves himself, we're in big trouble. Verse 32, let Christ, the Messiah, the anointed one, let Christ, the King of Israel, descend now from the cross, that we may see and believe. Boy, wouldn't he have shook them up if he had done that? And they, actually he, if you read all 4 Gospels, and they that were crucified with him reviled him. They ridiculed him, mocked him, made fun of him. One of them didn't, if you read all 4 Gospels. And he chewed out the other one for doing it. Verse 33. And when the 6th hour was come, 12 o'clock, noon, there was darkness over the whole land until the 9th hour. And at the 9th hour, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that's when the evening sacrifice is put to death. And even in Exodus chapter 12, when it says that they shall kill the lamb between the evenings, or something like that, what it means is 3 o'clock. Well, at 3 o'clock when the Passover lamb is killed, in Exodus 12, at 3 o'clock, God's lamb dies. And at the 9th hour, Jesus cried with a loud voice, saying, Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani, which is being interpreted, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why have you abandoned me? Fulfilling Psalms 22, verse 1. And some of them that stood by, when they heard it, said, Behold, he calleth Elias, or Elijah. And one ran and filled a sponge full of vinegar, and put it on a reed, and gave him to drink. They say this actually, the sponge and the vinegar was actually sour wine. It was that which soldiers and slaves drank. Cheap wine, really cheap wine. and gave him to drink, saying, Let alone, let us see whether Elias will come to take him down. And Jesus cried with a loud voice and gave up the ghost. And the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom. And that's important. The curtain between the holy place and the Holy of Holies was ripped from the top to the bottom. That shows God ripped it in two. And when God ripped it in two, the way into the presence of God was open to anybody through Jesus Christ and faith in his death, burial and resurrection, so on and so forth. Okay. And the veil of the temple was rent in twain from the top to the bottom. And when the centurion, which is an officer over 100 soldiers, which stood over against him, saw that he so cried out. Right before he gave up the ghost, he cried out, It is finished. Then he cried out, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. Then he gave up the ghost. And so the centurion heard him say, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. He gave up the ghost. And imagine the centurion standing there. Listen. And when the centurion, which stood over against him, saw that he cried out to God the Father, and gave up the ghost, he said, Truly, this man was the Son of God. It was very impressive to him when he saw what he'd done, how he died. There were also women looking on afar off, among whom was Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James the Less and Joses, and Salome, who also, when he was in Galilee, followed him and ministered unto him, and many other women which came up with him unto Jerusalem. Now it says that these women followed him and ministered unto him. We follow him also. We minister unto him. I want you to turn over to Luke chapter 8. We minister unto him. These women ministered unto Jesus of their food and other necessities as he went in ministry different places. Exactly how they did it, I don't know. Exactly when they did it, I don't know. Just know they did it. They ministered to Jesus. Now Luke chapter 8 verse 2 says, And certain women which had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities, Mary called Magdalene, out of whom went 7 devils. Out of whom went 7 devils, it says it right there. And Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's steward, and Susanna, and many others, which ministered unto him of their substance. So that's saying, when they were doing it, identifying the fact that they did it, and what they did was they ministered unto him of their substance, the thing, food and different things that was needed. Now turn over to Matthew chapter 25. How do we minister to Jesus? Well, we do what's written here. Matthew 25. And we want verse 33. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand. This is actually the judgment of the nations when Jesus comes back to reign upon the earth. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. And the right hand is always position of power, position of honor, so on and so forth. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was an hungered, and ye gave me meat. He was hungry back when the women ministered to him too, I'm sure. And they gave him food. And you gave me meat. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. Naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came unto me. In other words, you ministered unto me. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee and hungered, and fed thee? Now I want you to stop and think for a second. These people are not doing it for reward. They're not doing it for a pat on the back. They're not doing it to be glorified. They're not doing it so they can say, yeah, I go to such and such a church and I do this and that for Jesus. They don't even know they're doing it. So they're not doing it to be exalted in doing it. They're doing it because that's a part of their life, their makeup as a Christian, and the love of their heart and the giving and the passion of their heart. He said, then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee in hunger and fed thee? Well, I don't remember ever feeding you. Or thirsty and gave thee drink? When saw we thee a stranger and took thee in? Or naked and clothed thee? Or when saw we thee sick, or in prison, and came unto thee? And the king shall answer and say unto them, verily I say unto you, insomuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me.
Amen.
So instead of them following him and bringing them food and bringing them things that they needed, maybe it was a cold night, maybe they had blankets, I have no idea, bringing them water, whatever it was. Now, we do the same thing to him, but we do it unto others. And we do it unto him, doing it to others. And he says, it's just like you just gave it to me. You gave this guy a sandwich, basically in my name as a Christian, and you gave that sandwich to me. Lord, when did I give you a sandwich? He said, when you gave it to that guy that didn't have any food, you gave it to me. Now back to verse 42. Back, Mark 15. We are just about to the end. 42. And now, and what we're just, only thing we were showing there is the women ministered to him. They did it actually, physically, in the natural. We do it now spiritually by ministering to other people. Amen. Same thing, we minister to him. And now when the evening was come, because it was the preparation, that is, the day before the Sabbath. That's Friday. Sabbath is Saturday. Joseph of Arimathea, an honorable counselor, which also waited for the kingdom of God, came and went in boldly unto Pilate and craved the body of Jesus. And John will tell you that Nicodemus went with him. The two of them went in. Verse 44, and Pilate marveled if he were already dead. Well, why is Pilate marveling? Because they say crucifixion is such a painful, one of the most painful, agonizing deaths there is to die. And you hang on the cross in agony, insufferable thirst, and pain streaming through your body from 3 to 6 days it takes to die. Well, Jesus just died in 6 hours. Is he already dead? 6 hours? That's because he said, I'm giving you my life. I'm putting my spirit in your hands and giving up the ghost. So Pilate marveled if he were already dead. And calling unto him the centurion, he asked him whether he had been any while dead. And when he knew it of the centurion, he gave the body to Joseph. And he brought fine linen, and took him down, and wrapped him in the linen, and laid him in a sepulchre, which was hewn out of a rock, and rolled a stone under the door of the sepulchre. And Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of Joses beheld where he was laid. They were standing back somewhere watching him be put in the tomb. And we're going to stop right there with one more chapter next week, chapter 16. Not even a long chapter. But when you look at all of the rejection, all of the suffering that Jesus went through, every tiny little bit to the most excruciating, beyond imagination of pain he took for us. That was our pain. Everything was put upon him that should have been ours, including our sins. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, the last verse, said that we were made righteousness through him. All of our sins put upon him. 1 Peter 2:24 says all of our sin was put upon him. A lot of places. He took our sin, our shame. The wrath of God came upon him. Separation from the Father. Father, why hast thou forsaken me? Why have you abandoned me? Father could have said, son, the reason why is because you're standing in Gary's place. And because of sin, sin separates between God and man. So when all my sin went upon him, my separation had to go also. That's part of the payment for the sin. A lot of people say, well, he didn't go to hell, he only went into the grave, come out of the grave. The Bible says that he went into the heart of the earth. And if Jesus died on the cross and paid for our sin, only dying on the cross didn't pay for our sin. Because if it did pay for our sin, then people who just died a painful death would have paid for their sins. Payment of sin is going to hell for eternity. Coming out of hell, actually going into hell, coming out of hell, being put back in your body, and going into the lake of fire for eternity. As you die, your body goes to the dust, your soul, spirit goes into hell, we'll say, and at the end time of the resurrection, your body will come back, your spirit and soul will be put back in your body, and you'll stand before God in judgment. And those that go into heaven, or with the Lord for eternity, are going to have a new glorified body. They're just going to be transformed. Those that are lost are going to go in their body into the lake of fire. Doesn't sound very good, does it? Sounds terrible. So when you think about that, you say, thank you, Jesus, with all of my heart, for bailing me out of that. Because that's my destiny without you. Let's stand. Thank you, Lord.